going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRFTV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forums Twitter handle. That would be at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forums Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show, taking a look at some racing coming up for the weekend of April the 14th. We're also going to include a couple of grade ones that are coming up on Friday. So if you're watching this live, live.drf.com or livestream.com or any of those other Facebook mediums or the social media situations anyway, I should say, you'll be able to take a look at a couple races coming up this afternoon. If you listen to this podcast version, YouTube, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as SoundCloud. You can find this in plenty of different forums. If you go on over to YouTube, click that subscribe button on the Daily Racing Forums YouTube channel. You'll get all the latest offerings from DRFTV. Before we dive into the races on Friday afternoon, we'll transition into the Saturday afternoon races. First thing, just really quick, want to touch on the idea that we're at the finish line here as far as the Derby preps are concerned. We'll touch on both of them, the Arkansas Derby as well as the Lexington. Those are the final opportunities to obtain Derby points, qualifying points, to try to get into the starting gate at Churchill Downs. One horse in particular in Kentucky, this is a giant race for. That's My Boy Jack, but again, we'll dive into that race more in depth. And down in Arkansas, the top two finishers, they're going to get in. The question now becomes, is it two horses that have already established themselves and put them in position to get into the starting gate, or are we going to have a couple of just, I don't want to say oddball, but unforeseen circumstances where maybe some longer prices come through, get the job done, finish in the top two, and then all of a sudden the connections on the bottom part, on the bubble, they're going to be sweating this weekend. Whether you're trying to get in or you are on the cusp of being bumped out by someone that could overtake you. So the people that are right on that cusp, they would like to see very, very formful results. Horses that already have points, horses like Quip and Magnum Moon and Solomini, those types obtaining those points, finishing in the top two, because that's not going to hurt them very much. A horse like My Boy Jack winning the Lexington, that would be enough to vault him in, and it would bump a horse toward the bottom. On the flip side, if you've got a horse, I'm going to just throw a name out there, making it up just, again, out of left field. If you have a horse like Tenfold, if all of a sudden you finish second, you're going to be bumping someone that's in that bottom portion, in that 18, 19, 20 range, knowing that two spots are already taken from the winner of the UAE Derby as well as the winner of the European Road to the Kentucky Derby. The reason that the Arkansas Derby is as important as it is this weekend is because it's the final 100-point prep. Like I said, this weekend is the last weekend as far as points are concerned, but the final 100-point prep, and that brings us back to the conversation that I had before the 100-point prep started. We talked about it here on this show, the preview show. The idea that of the past 5 years, of all the years that we've had this point system implemented for the Kentucky Derby, the only horses that have won the Kentucky Derby have won the 100-point preps. So you have 6 races, or 7 races, 6 or 7, and I can rip them off for you really quickly. The winners of those races, if you are following trends, those are the only horses that have won the Kentucky Derby in the past, again, as long as this system has been implemented. That would mean horses like Audible, Mendelssohn, going back to the Louisiana Derby, Noble Indy. You look at the Wood Memorial last weekend with Vino Rosso. You look at the Bluegrass with Good Magic. Look at the Santa Anita Derby with Justify. The last one that you would have would be the winner of the Arkansas Derby. If history is any indication, one of those horses, based on what we've seen so far, and again, it's a very small sample size, so anything can happen, but based on how things have shaken down so far, one of those horses is going to win the Kentucky Derby based on the way it's gone. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen this time around, but I think it is certainly something that you need to keep in mind. And there's a reason that those horses that usually win those final preps go on to win the Kentucky Derby, because they're usually the best horses. Very rarely do you get completely oddball, off-the-charts results that kind of throw a monkey wrench into things. It's been a more formful situation since this point system has been instated. We'll find out if it continues this way, because early on in the sort of prep season, there was a lot of turbulence, a lot of turmoil. It feels like over the past 5 or 6 weeks, we've gotten very, very settled. We've had nothing outrageous, no wild results. You have had perhaps some bigger performances than you would have thought, but nothing completely out of left field. And I think that's part of the reason that these winners of these final 100-point preps have done as well as they have in the Kentucky Derby, because more often than not, they're the best horses for their generation. So We'll find out who's going to win the Arkansas Derby, round out that group of 100-point winners as far as those final preps are concerned. We'll find out. Perhaps one of those horses will go on to win the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby, the first Saturday in May. Before we get to that, let's talk about some racing coming up on Friday. A couple of grade ones, one in Kentucky, one in Arkansas. Let's start off with the Makers 46 Mile. One of two grade ones on Friday afternoon. Let's start off in Lexington, Kentucky. The field for the grade one, Makers 46 Mile. If you're new to this program, the odds on the right side of the screen, that's a value line, what I would consider fair odds on these horses, not a morning line. We'll take them right in post position order. The number 1, Nihilator, 99-1. Think he's just simply overmatched. The number 2 is Bala Rocks. 6-1 for Bill Mott, coming off of the long layoff. Haven't seen him since the Breeders' Cup Mile. Think he's a very talented horse. Not sure if we're going to get his best off the layoff, and he's probably going to need his best in order to win in here. Number 3 is Forge, another Mott runner. Most recently disappointed in the Mervyn Muniz. He was out in the clear, uncovered. Sounds like they would prefer to get cover in this spot. Good news is he's probably going to do his best running from a few lengths off of it, let everybody clear off, come over. I still don't know how good he actually is. Made him 13-1. The number 4 is Tower of Texas for Roger Atfield. Always have been a big fan of this horse. Thought he actually ran very, very well in the Hales Hope most recently. That was back in February on dirt at Gulfstream. I still think he does his best running up north of the border at Woodbine. Woodbine opens here in a few weeks. And also, from a speed figure standpoint, he's just a little bit on the light side. Made him 13-1. Number 5 is Frostmore, and I think Frostmore is very live in this spot for Christophe Clement. Second start off the layoff. Irad Ortiz stays aboard. I thought he was very impressive in that optional claimer in his first start since October of last year. First start as a 4-year-old. A little bit slow from a buyer's standpoint, but I think he can move forward here in that second start off the layoff. And again, second start as a 4-year-old made him 6-1. The number 6 is Heart to Heart. He's the horse they're all going to have to run down on the front end. Brian Lynch trained. Julian Leperoux retains the mount. Grade 1, finally got that monkey off of his back, winning the Gulfstream Park turf at 9 furlongs. 9 furlongs I don't think is really his trip. I think he's better suited for this flat mile distance. From a speed figure standpoint, he checks all the boxes. I have to be honest, I do think he's lost a little bit compared to where he once was. Having said that, we know this horse is an absolute beast when you let him out there on the front end and walk. The question becomes, does anybody go out there and keep him company on the front end? I'm banking on that. I'm hoping that happens, because if it doesn't, this thing could be a merry-go-round. Made Heart to Heart 7-2. The number 7 is Mr. Misunderstood for Brad Cox. Brad Cox last weekend at Keeneland got his first career Grade 1 victory with Monomoy Girl. Looking for his second one here in less than a week. Mr. Misunderstood, probably a little bit slow on figs, but he's paired up 95s. Think he can take a step forward here. Also like him cutting back from the 9 furlongs to the 8 furlong trip here. He's a perfect 4-for-4 at the distance. Made him 5-1. Number 8 is Next Shares for Richard Baltus. Highest last out buyer speed figure in the field with a 102. He's going to do his best running late. There's a part of me that believes his form has improved because he's out on the West Coast and he's gotten away from the East Coast. He was in capable hands of Bill Mott when he was over here, and he was good, but he was no superstar. He's gone out there. He's gotten much better. I think that's a combination of the turf courses and the competition. Next Shares made him 19-1. The number 9 is Ohm. Ohm is the key to this race, in my opinion, because if he does not go and push Heart to Heart, Heart to Heart could wire this field very easily. If Ohm is ridden aggressively, as he has in each of his past 2 starts, the Kilroe Mile most recently and the Thunder Road 2 starts back, I think that could help everyone else, because then Heart to Heart's going to have to work a lot harder early on. Having said that, I don't think Ohm is good enough to win in a spot like this. Made him 19-1. And the number 10 that rounds out the field is the 9-year-old Hoagie for Mike Maker. Maker stretched him out most recently in the Canadian turf. He got a wicked pace to run at, but he was never a loser. It was an impressive effort. A 101 buyer for the 9-year-old. He's clearly feeling good. He's run well enough at Keeneland in the past, and Keeneland can be a little bit of a quirky racing surface, the turf course particularly. Even if he gets a great setup, he's facing much, much better company in this spot, and I just want to be slightly against him from that outside draw. Made him 12-1. Leads us into the pick and the play for this race here, race number 9 on Friday afternoon. I like Mr. Misunderstood. I was torn between he and Frostmorn, and this is probably going to sound a little bit silly, and I'm sure some people are just staunchly against this, think it's a cop-out, think it's a very, very poor way to go about it. In a wide open race, there are 2 horses that I like, and I think they should both be prices. Frostmorn, I made him 6-1. If he's north of 6-1, I'm going to play him to win. If Mr. Misunderstood is north of the 5-1 or better, 5-1 or better, I should say, I'm going to play him to win as well. And I understand. I realize some people that it's stupid because you're guaranteeing one wager that you make is a loss. But I think if you're taking a look at it, for me, percentage-wise, if I have them both at 31% combined, I'm essentially saying I believe that I've got roughly a 5-2 or a 2-1 shot. I'm going to be content with that. And I understand. If you don't believe it and you don't like it, I'm sure I'll hear about it. But the point is, I think they're both interesting longer prices, and they're going to be offering much greater value, I think, than what they should be. I think they should be shorter than what they will go off at. I'm going to play them both to win. $20 to win on the number 7, my actual pick in the race, Mr. Misunderstood, as well as the number 5, Frostmore. And realizing one's going to be a losing bet at best, and at worst, they're both losing bets, but I do think they're both going to offer some value, and perhaps more value than they should. They're going to be prices that are higher than what their true odds would indicate. Again, I made Mr. Misunderstood 5-1. He is my pick, but I will also play the number 5, Frostmore, to win at 6-1 or greater. Not nearly as interesting a betting race, but arguably the most important race of the weekend outside of the Arkansas Derby, the Apple Blossom on Friday afternoon at Oaklawn. Now, this race, maybe you are so inclined to try to beat the big girl, but I don't think this is nearly as good a betting race as what we were just talking about with the Makers 46 Mile. But this race could be as important, if not more important, than any other race run this weekend. This is the field for the Grade 1 Apple Blossom at Oaklawn Park on Friday afternoon. The forecast is calling for pretty severe weather. Some serious rain, maybe some thunderstorms, essentially just ensuring you're probably going to have an off racing surface, and it's very, very key when we get to you-know-who here momentarily. In post position order, the number 1, Tiger Moth, 49-1. Would appreciate a wet racetrack. Don't think she's fast enough. The number 2, Unbridled Mo, another horse that would appreciate a wet racetrack, has run well in the past for Todd Pletcher, but I don't think she's as good as she once was. Made her 8-1. The number 3, Furiously Kissed, 99-1. No disrespect. Don't think you're fast enough, although would appreciate a wet racetrack. The number 4, Beach Flower, 99-1. Another horse that has done well on off-going, but you just look at the speed figures, not fast enough. The star of the show, the star of the afternoon, the number 5, Unique Bella for Jerry Hollendorfer and Mike Smith, made her 1-5. She's 2-5 on the morning line. I think she goes off at 1-9. The question, or she might go off at 1-20 for all we know. The question about Unique Bella is, can she handle a wet racetrack, and can she handle a ship out of California? She has faced neither of those in her 9 career races. We'll find out if she does. She's going to be, obviously, the horse to beat in this spot. We'll touch on her a little bit more momentarily. Number 6 is Streamline. Streamline has won big races at Oaklawn in the past. She has run well enough on a wet track as well. Problem is, from a speed figure standpoint, she is lengths slower than Unique Bella. I made her 24-1. And the number 7, Farrell, the connections have made it clear if it is wet, they are scratching because she cannot stand up on a wet racetrack, even if she goes here. I don't think she has any chance in this race because she's in a very difficult spot. Do you go and try to chase Unique Bella, realizing that's probably a losing proposition, or do you try to clear? And if you try to clear, you're probably using way too much juice early on, and you're probably going to be a sitting duck for Unique Bella and anyone else coming from behind you. So Farrell's in a very, very just unfortunate position with that outside draw. I think probably for all parties considered, probably be best if they didn't go in this spot, but I understand it's a grade 1. You want to try to get that grade 1 placing. I made Farrell 16-1. The pick and the play in here, this is not an exciting little segment as far as the pick and the play. The pick is Unique Bella. There's no question about it. And before we dive into all the minutia and all of the details of surrounding this race and the possible implications going forward, why not go back and take a look at her impressive win in the Santa Maria? Here is Michael Rona with the stretch run.
Lengths to Majestic Heat, a length and a half to Mopatism, and they're clear of Shenandoah Queen, coming past the 8th pole, and he doesn't need to even think about the whip on Unique Bella, who leads by 6 lengths. Majestic Heat and Mopatism are battling home fairly, but the only view they've had is of the Grey Filly's capacious posterior. Unique Bella, 1,200 pounds of horsepower, and she dominated the Santa Maria.
109 buyer, 131 time form US rating. Look, if she does anything like that, she's going to absolutely win by the length of the stretch here. Hollendorfer has had success shipping into Oaklawn in the past. The reason this race is so important, because we saw West Coast run okay over in Dubai. Not great, not nearly as well as I thought he would run or some other people thought he would run. Outside of West Coast, Accelerate is in very good form. You're going to see him at Oaklawn on Saturday afternoon. But outside of those two horses, who is boss in this division as far as the older males are concerned and the big prizes? There isn't really anyone to speak of. It's kind of up for grabs. You get a horse like Unique Bella, who Mike Smith has commented on her size, her physique. She's built more like a boy than the girls. She's not lightly framed. She's big, able-bodied. She goes out there and does what she's supposed to do here. Now you start wondering going forward, what does the campaign look like? You can keep her against the fillies, no question about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of money to be made there. But it does make you wonder going forward as the year goes on, are they tempted to take on the boys in the biggest stages and with the most money on the line and way down the road in November? And she has to stay sound. She's had her fair share of physical issues. She stays sound. The idea of her running possibly not just in the Breeders' Cup, but in the Classic against the males, as opposed to the distaff, is a very, very interesting proposition going forward. Again, one thing at a time. She has to prove that she can ship. She has to prove that she can win on a wet racetrack, because both of those things could be legitimate possibilities the first Friday or the first Saturday in November at Churchill Downs for the Breeders' Cup this year. But if she does do what she's supposed to do on Friday afternoon, all of a sudden, there are a number of possibilities. And if she runs as well as she did in the Santa Maria, if you get into the high 100 or close to like the 110 range, then you're thinking, maybe we got something a little bit bigger and better here, something a little bit special. Unique Bella, way the horse to beat in Friday's Apple Blossom. We'll find out if she can handle all those little X factors that she's never had to deal with in the past. But if you call a spade, she's supposed to put on a show in this race. The final 100-point Kentucky Derby prep, Saturday afternoon, the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby, Oak Lawn Park, Hot Springs, Arkansas, race number 11, happens to be the DRF Bets race of the day. You can head on over to the Race of the Day page on DRF.com, get free formula past performances if you'd like. Here we are, right in post position order. The number 1 is Beautiful Shot for Keith DeSormo. Thought this horse was nice as a 2-year-old. Disappointed with the effort in the Gotham. I understand he ended up getting shuffled and pinched and things didn't work out, but he was never really running in there. He's going to need to do a heck of a lot better if he's even going to hit the board here. 32-1. Machismo, a horse that I picked in the Bluegrass last week. Certainly did not think they would be wheeling him back in a week. The Bluegrass trip didn't work out ideally, but at the same time, you know, you got to do a little bit better than 12th, beating 20.5 lengths. Now you're wheeling back here. I liked him last week. I don't like him here. 24-1. The number 3 is Tenfold for Steve Asmussen, Winchell Thoroughbreds, bred and owned. I think this is a nice little horse. I think he's interesting. Maybe a little bit too much too soon, but he hasn't done anything wrong in 2 lifetime starts. Thought he was game to win that last run, and that non-winner's a 1 other than. I made him 12-1. I wouldn't be surprised if he ran well. I would be a little bit surprised if he won this race, but I think he's a nice horse, possibly with some upside going forward. Again, made him 12-1. The number 4, Dream Baby Dream, finished second in the Sunland Derby behind Runaway Ghost. It's been a little bit of time. Another Asmussen-trained horse. Does his best running coming off the pace. Had a big pace to run at in that race at Sunland Park. Not sure if he's going to get that here. Don't love his chances. 49-1. Number 5 is Solomini, likely to be one of the favorites come post time, coming in for Bob Baffert. We know Baffert's track record at Oak Lawn Park. I thought the Rebel was, it was decent. It was a nice starting off point. He's going to have to move forward. Maybe I'm making way too much out of something that I don't know enough about, admittedly. But boy, when I watch a workout like he had most recently, it looked like a dumpster fire. Now, perhaps he's ready to go and he'll move forward off of that workout, but I don't want to find out. Based on what I saw there, and again, by no means am I one of the experts that we have, whether it's the DRF Clocker Report or any of the clockers out there in the industry. When I go and watch that, and if I'm looking at it going, oof, probably not a good thing. Solomini, I made him 6-1. He's going to be much shorter than that come post time. The number 6 is Magnum Moon, the horse they're all going to need to beat. The winner of the Rebel most recently on March the 17th. Very impressive. He's unbeaten 3 for 3. He's done nothing wrong. He's been visually awesome in all 3 starts. I have no knocks against this horse. I made him 9-5. He's probably going to be shorter than that, but I think he's a major player in this race, and I think he could be a legitimate threat in the Kentucky Derby. The number 7 is Plainsman. Ran 3rd in that non-winners of 1 other than behind Tenfold. No match for him. Thought he's a nice little horse. Don't think he can win here. Made him 49-1. The number 8 is Quip for Rudolph Brissett. I thought this was an impressive effort in the Tampa Bay Derby in his first start as a 3-year-old, 94 buyer, 118 time Form US rating. Form of that race has been flattered when Flame Away comes back to run second in the Bluegrass last weekend and Vino Rosso comes back to win the Wood. I think Quip is a nice horse. He's going to get another sort of test here in this spot. It'd be fascinating to see what Florent Geroux decides to do as far as a trip is concerned. Do you go to try to take the initiative because it doesn't look like there's a ton of pace signed on in here, or are you content trying to sit off and work at a very similar trip to the one they did down in Oldsmar, Florida? Made Quip 7-2, and the number 9 is Combatant, another Asmussen runner in here. Does his best running from off the pace. Have to be honest, not sure he's going to get the pace that he needs, and I'm starting to wonder, is he more of a... doesn't like to get the job done. I understand he ran into Magnum Moon most recently and 2 starts back, my boy Jack, who shot up a golden rail. There's just a part of me that more and more time goes by, I do wonder if he's better off used underneath, and perhaps he's going to want shorter distances. A made Combatant 8-1. Leads us to the pick and the play for the Arkansas Derby. The pick, no surprise, I'm going to go with the chalk in here, Magnum Moon. And you know what? Just to refresh and jog your memory, let's go back and take a look at the stretch run. It was so impressive winning the Rebel. Here's Vic Stauffer with the call.
Lots of chances, top of the stretch. Magnum Moon has taken over the lead. He's 2 lengths in front from Title Ready. Combatant splits horses. Solimini's got to go from there to the outside end. Higher Power and Magnum Moon comes to the 16th pole, and now he's 3 in front. Combatant and Solimini chase him to the wire. It is Magnum Moon, undefeated and a Rebel winner.
I have no knock against this horse. I said it before. I don't know that he's quite as talented as a Justify or maybe even his uncoupled stablemate or his stablemate, Audible. But at the same time, he's done nothing wrong, and he's so lightly raced. I don't think it's crazy to think that there's another forward move in him. I love that Luis Saez has been aboard him all 3 lifetime starts. He knows this horse, knows what makes him tick. He can win from on the lead. He can win from just off of it. I think this is a very, very talented horse, very promising. Made him 9-5. Don't think I get the 9-5, which leads me into the play. There is no play for me in this race. It's going to be sit back and watch, take some notes, try to see what happens here. Hopefully everyone works out a comfortable trip. I suppose my big stance in this race is that I just don't like Solimini here. I don't think he has developed the way that I thought he would or many others thought he would so far. I know he's only run once as a 3-year-old, but there's a reason. He had some hiccups, took him a while to get back to the races. Very rarely am I going to be against a Baffert horse like this, but I'll let him beat me. If he wins, great, and I'd like to see, who knows, maybe he can move forward, but based on that last workout and the fact that he has not had the smoothest of 3-year-old campaigns, I'm against Solimini. One horse I'm certainly not against. I'm not against Quip either. I think Quip is a very talented horse. It'll be interesting to see what we get out of him Saturday afternoon. But the horse they're all going to need to beat, my pick in the Arkansas Derby, Magnum Moon. If he gets through this, you got to look at him on that short list of contenders for the first Saturday in May. Perhaps the best betting race of the weekend as far as the stakes are concerned, back at Keeneland, Lexington, Kentucky. This is the field for the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley. Older fillies and mares going 1 mile and 16th on the turf course. In post position order, the number 1 is Cambodia, coming in for Tom Proctor. Proctor got this filly in raging form last year. She's a 6-year-old mare now. She's been given some time since the Matriarch. The Matriarch, it wasn't a bad effort, but it was just kind of flat. She had a pretty good trip, all things considered, and she just didn't really punch on down the lane. We'll find out what you get from her for what it's worth. Past 4 years, 61 to 180 day layoffs. Graded stakes for Tom Proctor, 1 for 21 with only a 65-cent ROI. She can win this race if she runs her best. I made her 6-1. The number 2 is Lovely Bernadette. I think she's a nice horse. I just think she is in a very, very difficult spot. Made her 49-1. The 3 is Off Limits, one of a number in here for Chad Brown. The Hillsborough, the return to the races, was not a bad effort, but it wasn't a great effort. I do wonder, I understand that she's won at this distance twice from 5 lifetime starts. I wonder if she's a little bit better at the flat mile. Doesn't mean she can't win in here. She's going to need a little bit of pace in front of her. I made Off Limits 6-1. The number 4 is Dona Bruja for Nacho Correas. Jose Ortiz with the mount. Most recently a winner of the Grade 3 Endeavor at Tampa Bay Downs. And the interesting thing about that was all of a sudden a horse that had been a mid-pack to rear kind of runner broke on top, went to the front, and buried a pretty decent field with La Coronel, who also ran in there, came back to run very well. A nice third in that Hillsborough, which, again, we'll talk about her a little bit later on because she's in this field as well. Dona Bruja, highest last out buyer in the field with a 103. If you think all of a sudden she has the ability to go and sit and be just as effective, she's very, very dangerous. Don't hold that one run at Keeneland against her last year in the First Lady. She tried to come from last in a race with absolutely zero pace. I made Donna Bruja 5-1. The number 5 is Kitten's Roar, a horse that I've always liked a little bit here from Mike Maker. The problem is, calling a spade, she's probably just a notch below the best horses in this race. But when she's at her absolute best, she can come with a serious run. I think she's a little bit tough, though, 24-1. Bletchley from Mark Casse, second start here in the United States. I thought that optional claimer was a very, very good effort. The concern I have, Magical Sky, the runner-up that day, I thought she kind of hung a little bit. I love the fact that Bletchley has a serious late kick. She came home in 28 flat in that run down at Gulfstream on March the 15th, but it helps when you go 25-2 for the opening quarter mile. I think she's okay. Might be in a little bit tough. Made her 32-1. Sister Charlie could be the X factor of the race and of this division for the entire year for Chad Brown. She gets Lasix for the first time. She retains John Velasquez. We haven't seen her since July 8th last year. That was in the Grade 1 Belmont Oaks with 3-year-olds, 3-year-old restricted race. The form that she had showed in Europe prior to coming over here would already make her a contender. She ran a giant race in the Belmont Oaks, considering it was a very quick turnaround. She had run second in the French Oaks 2 starts back, and then she came back in about 3 weeks and ran a good second in the Belmont Oaks. That was before New Money Honey's form sort of tailed off. Sister Charlie getting the Lasix on. If you think she takes a step forward from 3 to 4, and just with the Lasix on, she could be a monster. The question also becomes, is this distance too short for her? Is she going to need 1.25 miles or 1.5 miles before we see her best? I would imagine races down the road like the Beverly D are going to come into play, but for this race here, if you don't think 1 mile and 16th is too short for her and you think she's ready to go off the layoff, which you have no reason not to when she goes out for Chad, she is very, very dangerous. I made her 6-1 in here. The number 8 is La Coronel. Talked about her a little bit already. Ran second behind Donna Bruja in the Endeavor. Ran third behind 4-star Crook and Proctor's Ledge. 2 horses that also run in this race on Saturday. In that Hillsboro, the thing about La Coronel that's so fascinating, she's 5 of 14 lifetime. She is 3 for 3 over the Keeneland turf course. She loves the Keeneland turf, and that's very, very important. Some horses love it. Some horses hate it. La Coronel is interesting, especially because she has a little bit of tactical speed. If she can get into the run a little bit early, she's interesting. Made her 8-1. The number 9, Ultra Brat for Graham Motion. She hasn't done a heck of a lot wrong in these 2 starts off the layoff. She won that Marshua's River, came back and ran well in the Suwannee River. I just don't think she's quite as good as some of the other girls in here. Made her 49-1. The number 10 is Proctor's Ledge for Brendan Walsh. The Hillsboro had to be a tough beat for them, for all the connections involved. She has a nice turn of foot, a quick burst. Maybe the 1.8 miles was a little bit too far for her. Getting back to 8.5 will help her cause. At the same time, she's certainly going up against better horses. She's already going to go up against 4-star Crook, who's drawn just to her outside, who beat her on the square in that most recent run. But now you bring in Sister Charlie. Now you bring in some of these other horses, Adona Bruja, Cambodia, you name it. She's going to have to really run the race of her life. I made her 19-1. And the number 11 is 4-star Crook, the other Chad in here, 1 of 3. She has the ability to come with a serious run. She won that Hillsboro off the long layoff most recently. Second start off the bench. Javier picks the mount up here. I think she's good. She's always been campaigned very, very conservatively, kept in and amongst New York bred company for the majority of it. And I understand you come back and you win that Hillsboro, and she came home in 10-4 for that final 1/8 of a mile. So, I mean, you can't throw her out by any stretch. But I just wonder, there's been a reason that she's been campaigned predominantly against New York breds, in my opinion. I could be entirely wrong. Maybe she's just a different mare at this point in her career. I want her to prove to me again. Made her 6-1 in this spot. Leads us to the pick and the play for the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley on Saturday afternoon. I've always been a fan of Dona Bruja. I think Nacho Correas does a very, very good job. And again, just to jog your memory, let's go back and take a look at the stretch run of her impressive win in the Endeavor. Here's Richard Grunder with the call.
The run. Dona Bruja held together beautifully, Boy Ortiz. Cuts the corner and now bumps the margin to 5. La Cornell running at the leader. Second, toward the rail, lovely Laurie coming up with a huge effort. But down to the wire, it's Dona Bruja. Well handled throughout by Eclipse Award winner Jose Ortiz, reporting home about
103 buyer, 124 time form U.S. rating, with an entirely different running style. Out there on the lead as opposed to the other races in her career here in the States where she's come from off of the pace. If you think all of a sudden she has that ability to just adapt and play the break and whatever happens, happens, she could be a monster. I made her 5-1. I will play $20 to win on her. And again, I'm using those as nothing more than denominations and placeholders. You can play more, you can play less, do whatever you want. 20 to win on Donna Bruja at 5-1 or better. I'm also going to play a $10 exacta box, including the number 7 Sister Charlie, because Sister Charlie could very easily be a freak, and she could be boss in this division going forward, but you never know until they do come back. I want her to prove that she is as good as she was when she went away. She gets the Lasix on. Johnny stays aboard. I'm going to play a $10 exacta box in case she is the goods and she's just better than Donna Bruja. But I really believe that Donna Bruja is one of the best, if not the best, turf mare that we have here in the United States. I'll play 20 to win on Donna Bruja and the Jenny Wiley at odds of 5-1 or better. Last race we'll take a look at on this week's preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Let's take a look at the Lexington Stakes in Keeneland, or in Lexington, I should say, at Keeneland Racecourse. Points race to get into the Kentucky Derby. It's going to be very, very interesting for one horse in particular. This is the make or break that I think I've been looking forward to. The option, or the opportunity anyway, for a horse that, you know what, you don't want to go to the Arkansas Derby. I understand. You don't want to face the big boys, and not necessarily not face the big boys, but it's so difficult to say. Is this the path of least resistance, or is this playing it smart, saying, you know what, we think we're just better than these horses. Let's get the points. This will be a de facto prep race and get us into the gate, as opposed to having to really have this horse cranked up and ready to go in Arkansas, and maybe we can get the points necessary to get into the starting gate. I think this is a smart move for the connections of my boy Jack. We'll find out how I feel about the race. Let's take a look at the field in post-position order. Race number 9 at Keeneland Saturday afternoon. The number 1 Battle at Sea for Mike Maker. Both victories gate-to-wire fashion. I think there's going to be a legitimate pace signed on in here. Don't love his chances, 49-1. The number 2 Telekinesis for Mark Cassie. From a speed figure standpoint, makes a lot of sense in here. Has a little bit of tactical ability, can sit, but can also be forwardly placed. I gotta be honest, I just didn't love that non-1 other than most recently. Thought he was down on the inside. Maybe it was an uncomfortable position, but I didn't think there was a heck of a lot of an excuse. Thought he was just, okay. Made him 13-1. Gonna need to run better than that. The number 3, 7 Trumpets for Dale Romans. If you believe the Jerome, he has a big chance in here. The problem is, all the other races around it leave something to be desired. Don't love 7 Trumpets, made him 49-1. The number 4, Honor Up for Bill Mott. This is an interesting horse visually because he has not been seen since December of his 2-year-old campaign when he broke his maiden basically in a blizzard at Aqueduct. He beat a dreadful field, but the way that he did it, he looked like the goods. And we've seen Mott with lightly raced horses. He doesn't put them in positions he doesn't think they belong in. The fact that they run this horse here off of the long layoff, going 2 turns for the first time against Stakes Company. I think it's a very confident move for this horse. Made him 6-1. Wouldn't be surprised if Honor Up runs very, very well. The number 5, Magical Meister, goes out for James Chapman. Also cross-entered in another race. Don't love his chances here if he goes 99-1. The number 6, Gravitas for Adam Kitchingman. This is a very impressive 2-year-old. He won the Grade 3 Bob Hope. He won the Springboard Mile going 2 turns. The Springboard Mile also showed the fact that he has the ability to sit just off of the pace. He jumped the tracks late. That's, I think, why he popped to his left lead. Problem is he had a knee chip after that, and he's been laid up since then. This could be a combination of things. I suppose if he wins and gets some points, it puts him on the bubble for the Derby, but boy, you'd be throwing a lot at him in a short amount of time. Or this could be looked at as the logical sort of prep to get ready for a race like the Preakness at Pimlico 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby. I think Gravitas is a talented horse. I want to see what we get off the layoff. Made him 5-1. The number 7 is Pony Up for Todd Pletcher, John Velasquez. This is a horse that I think is much better suited on turf and synthetic than he is on dirt. His 2 dirt races, I understand when he debuted back at Gulfstream in July. Keep in mind, Gulfstream in July, not Saratoga, not Monmouth, not Belmont, anything like that. He was close, but that run 2 starts back in the Holy Bull. He just wasn't very good. I don't like his chances here on dirt. I made him 8-1. Number 8 is Grisita for Doug O'Neill. Blinkers go on for the first time. That most recent run down at the fairgrounds in Louisiana Bred Company, just no match for a horse like Battle at Sea. There was a legitimate pace signed on in there, and he just flattened out late. They paid $400,000 for a son of Custom for Carlos, who stands for $3,500. They clearly must think there's some ability here. I don't love his chances, 19-1. The number 9 Navy Armed Guard finally broke through for Joan Scott in the most recent race, broke the maiden in gate-to-wire fashion. The problem I have is if you think that's the running style that will be employed here, boy, you're going to have some company on the front end. It is heartening, though, to go back to January 14th at Tampa. This horse came from off the pace, only lost by a neck. You go back to the Churchill Downs race as a 2-year-old in November. He came from off of it, and he got close. I do wonder if he has the ability to sit and make up some ground. I think he could possibly do that. Problem is he's not fast enough, made him 32-1. The number 10 is Zanesville for Tom Amos. I think this is an interesting horse in here. 2 starts back, non-winners in one other than at Delta Downs. Buried a field. Really, really impressive effort. Came back in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, tried synthetic for the first time. Thought he ran pretty well at a mile and an eighth, all things considered. Probably shied away a little bit from a horse down the lane, but, and actually that horse was pony up. I think he's okay, and I think this dirt is probably what he wants. I think he's got a big chance in here. 6-1, maybe I'm being a little bit overzealous. Maybe he probably doesn't deserve to be that short, but I think he has a big chance in here. 6-1 for the number 10, Zanesville. The number 11, Arched Feather, the horse that I liked in the Battaglia Memorial. Didn't really pick his feet up at any point in the running. I kind of thought the surface would be better suited for him, that synthetic, necessarily than the dirt. I don't like him as a dirt horse, 24-1. And the number 12 is My Boy Jack, the horse they're all going to need to beat. 3rd in the Louisiana Derby, the winner of the Grade 3 Southwest, 2 starts back. I have no problem with this being the path to get to the Kentucky Derby. The problem is you run the risk of what they unfortunately encounter, drawing the far outside, and potentially, I think there's going to be pace in here. But if for some reason the pace doesn't develop and you're a confirmed one-run closer, boy, you're really up against it. You're always at the mercy of pace and trip when you have a one-run sort of closer. My Boy Jack, I also maintain he's a better turf horse than a dirt horse. I'm waiting for them to get him back there. I understand why he's here, and I understand everybody. If you've got a good 3-year-old, you want to try to get into the Derby, or you want to try to get into the Oaks. I think when it's all said and done and the dust settles, he might be one of the best 3-year-olds of his generation on turf, not dirt. I made My Boy Jack 4-1. Leads us to the pick and the play. We're going to go back and take a look right now at the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And Zanesville is a horse that's rolling up on the outside. And he comes on, and you're going to see he does. He shies a little bit away from pony up down the lane. But I think first time going a mile and an eighth, first time on a different surface, coming from off the pace, shipping. I thought it was a pretty good effort. And I really was heartened by that run 2 starts back over the dirt at Delta Downs. I kind of feel like the dirt is probably what he wants to do at this point in his career. I have no knock against him, really. He's on the slow side. There's no question about that. But I'll take a chance in here with a big number. I made him 6-1. He's going to be a heck of a lot higher than that. So my play in this spot, my pick, the number 10 Zanesville, my play is going to be $20 to win on him here in the Lexington at Keeneland on Saturday afternoon. One of the final prep races for this year's Kentucky Derby. That is going to do it as far as previews are concerned for this weekend here on the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition. If you've been listening live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Form social media pages, at DRF Inside Post on Twitter, as well as the Daily Racing Form Facebook page. If you listen to this in podcast, you have YouTube, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as SoundCloud. If you want to fire away at me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, questions, comments, concerns, whether you like it, whether you hate it, whatever it may be, I usually go through and take a look, and I'm usually pretty good about responding to questions or anything else like that. So again, at Bernier_Matt on Twitter. We will be back again Tuesday with the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show, getting you ready, taking a look back and seeing how things shook down this weekend. We'll dive into some of the graded stakes races, and at that point, we will have a pretty good idea what the field of 20 is going to look like for the first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs in the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby for 3-year-olds going a mile and a quarter. But first things first, let's get through this weekend. Good luck however you're playing, whatever you're playing, wherever you're playing. This has been the Matt Bernier Show.